Marino and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Michael Cohen and President Trump trading accusations about what really happened with hush money payments to two women before the election. In his first interview since being sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, the president's former personal attorney claims he was following Trump's instructions about the payoffs.
He directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters. You have to remember at what point in time that this matter came about, 2 weeks or so before the election, post the Billy Bush comments. So yes, he was very concerned about how this would affect the election.
To help his campaign.
To help him and the campaign.
But President Trump is saying Cohen's lying about what actually happened.
I never directed him to do anything incorrect or wrong. And he understands that. Look, he did some bad things unrelated to me, maybe related to his other clients. I wasn't his only client. Wow. And Michael Cohen pled guilty to something that's not even a crime. Wait a minute. These are campaigns. Nobody, except for me, would be looked at like this. Nobody. What about Congress, where they have a slush fund? And millions of dollars is paid out each year.
Also breaking today, the special counsel turning over documents to a judge in the Michael Flynn case. The response coming after Flynn's attorneys argued that the FBI encouraged the former national security advisor to do an interview with agents without agents present. Lawyers. Robert Mueller's team claims Flynn should have known it was a crime to lie to the FBI, but the documents say they never warned him beforehand. All right, Emily, let's go back to the first part. The president says, what about Congress? They have this big slush fund that they use with taxpayer money to settle sexual misconduct cases. That's never reported anywhere. Aren't there just felonies galore in Congress?
Wait a minute.
Well, I was talking
to Emily.
Emily. Is your name Emily?
But let me ask you, are we
cute,
off
but you're not
topic?
that cute.
Have we just moved away from Cohen and all that happened today?
Well, I'm not hijacking.
It's only 5:02.
The segment. I'm trying to lay it out specifically.
Oh my
Relax.
Gosh, this is
Juan, what's gotten into you?
I just think it's whataboutism, run rampant. Go right ahead.
I take offense to that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. So here's how I think about that. There is a bill right now in Congress being pushed through bilaterally that will take out from the salary expenditures that taxpayers pay in terms of paying that harassment thing. So that will be changed. I do think that it's a little bit of a shell game. I want to point out, if I can, though, that everyone is talking about the specific intent associated with it. And I just want to make sure that viewers understand that, yes, that's what separates a civil from a criminal campaign finance violation charge. But most importantly to me is that Flynn situation. I think it's a hideous abuse of power to treat any of those kinds of conversations casually, and that we can never overestimate the amount of weight that the government brings with it every time they just sit down and ask, hey, how are you? And so for Comey then to blame it on a disorganized administration, and so I thought I'd send a couple guys over, I think is a horrible abuse of power, 100%. And regardless what happens with the judge reviewing the Flynn documents, and regardless of what he should have known, there is no way that when someone sits down and says, hey, I have a couple questions for you, but, oh, if you want, I can grab a warrant and go through the DOJ, or we can just sit, if you think that you will not acquiesce to that, it's not the same thing.
Well, Juan does not want to talk about the Flynn case. Juan wants to talk about Michael Cohen.
Wait. To her point.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
To her point. I actually really hated how Comey told the story. He acted like a celebrity on the Tonight Show.
Do we have that tape?
I don't know.
Do you want to play some Comey tape about how he sent the agents in? Let's roll it and then react.
Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. So if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
And so they laughed.
Yeah.
They laughed. Yeah. It just felt like he was playing with somebody's life, but it was funny and clever. Hey, you know, they're kind of disorganized. We could send some people over there. That's kind of scummy.
He said, you know, we got away with it. That's the line.
And that's why people laughed, because they thought, ha, he's a funny dude for that.
All right, Juan. Michael Cohen, let's go back to the top. Anything you'd like to say about the former president's lawyer talking to ABC?
Well, I think one thing is clear. It's not, as the president wants to pose it, he said, me versus Cohen, and who are you going to believe, because Cohen has been proven to be a liar and he's going to jail. You've also got the National Enquirer head now saying the same thing. You have the Wall Street Journal saying, in fact, Trump was in the room for many of these discussions. And so it becomes like the weight of evidence is all on the side of Michael Cohen. And in response to what Greg just said, oh my gosh, you think about Flynn. He lied to the chief of staff. He lied to the vice president. He lied to the press repeatedly. This is all before the FBI gets involved. He was lying about his contacts with the Russians.
That doesn't excuse
we don't know
procedural
why he's doing
deviation.
it.
I mean, that's the whole reason that criminal cases are tossed out, because of the chain of evidence being slightly tarnished. We as a republic support procedure and process. And
Sure, but there's no tarnish here. He, in fact, then lied to the FBI, and it's been pointed out, he was head of the National Security Agency. He was the National Security Advisor. He was a 32-year veteran of our military. My argument would be he should be held to a higher standard.
Well, you know what he should have done? He should never allow FBI agents to ask you questions without a lawyer present. I never like to toot my own horn and steal things and claim that they're mine. So this is what I'm going to do. Brooke Sigmund, who's a producer here, wrote a great piece for FoxNews.com. Never heard of Fox. Great, great resource. Yeah. False statement charges abound in Mueller probe, in contrast to Hillary Clinton case. And it lays out, I think, 5 people in this Trump orbit have been charged with making false statements. Tons of people lied to the FBI in the Hillary case. One person said that lying his ASS off. Can you believe I almost said that? And they were never prosecuted for making false statements. It just seems like there's a little bit of a double standard.
Right now I can hear Shep throwing something at the TV.
Well, there's a point to be made there, right? Because the Democrats hate Comey as well as the Republicans hate Comey, right? But it's interesting for him to go to the 90-second why, and they're like, oh, well, we can forgive him. I'm thinking if I'm in the audience of the 90-second why, which for those of you at home, just so you know, on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, liberal audience, okay? So you're sitting there and you're thinking, they wanted Hillary Clinton to win. They can't believe that this happened. But they blamed Comey for that. But they'll go and they'll pay money to sit and buy his book and listen to his spiel because they actually hate Trump worse than they hate Comey.
Can't we all just agree, Juan, that we both hate Comey and just get it through?
I don't think Comey is the topic here, but
it was the second topic.
But you want to talk about Comey, you want to talk about Clinton, you want to talk about people who testified in the case that's been long settled. So this is whataboutism run wild.
Here's what I've learned. Look, we know Cohen is a bad guy. He's as tainted as potato salad left out for a week. But every president almost seems to have some shady friends, and this is why I'm not running for president in 2020.
But you think that's the reason why?
Yes, I don't want to take any of my shady friends down, because the moment that I take over in, let's say, 2024, they're going to start looking at all of you.
You're so altruistic.
No, I'm looking ahead. But everybody gets examined. That's the way politics is, and this is what.
You mean even Dana, who is as clean as the wind-driven snow, would get caught up in a special?
Oh, you don't know the things she's done behind the scenes. I know where the bodies are buried.
That's why I never ran for office.
Yes.
Oh, that's the reason.
Can I just say one thing that would be, if you are watching this thing about Michael Cohen, if he's already giving interviews to the media like he did this morning, that probably means, and you can check me on this, Emily, that he doesn't have a lot more to say to either the special counsel or to the SDNY.
I agree, and I was actually going to say to you that maybe a PR standpoint would be a different piece of advice than as an attorney, but I have been to multiple sentencings, and I have never in my life seen a more dramatic or frankly pathetic kind of exposition of woe is me and this is why I did it, and lamenting before the judge. I have never seen such a lack of personal responsibility and a vertebrae.
With Stephanopoulos and the judge, or just before the judge?
The judge, and then going into the ABC interview, which I would never have advised him to do that.
Something changed, Emily, which is I think that the president, according to Cohen, went after his family, said, hey, look at his wife, look at his father-in-law. Look at where the money is. And I think Cohen then was like, well, you know what? I was covering for your dirty deeds, but no more, buddy. And so I think he's punching back in Trumpian style.
All right, Emily, we got to go, but well said. You're hearing this right. Democrats actually calling out the media's Trump
media and their own party. Yes, you heard me correctly. First, Nancy Pelosi is urging the press to stop the round-the-clock coverage of President Trump. Watch.
I wish that the press would spend a lot more time on what we need to do here to meet the needs of the American people instead of morning, noon, and night allegations against the president. I think you'd have more viewers or readers if it would address concerns that people have rather than just this ongoing coverage of what's current with the president from one day to the next.
And outgoing Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill is telling Democrats to stop focusing so much on gender politics.
I think one of the mistakes that we make as a party is spending too much time talking about the gender thing. We are a party of all kinds of people. And, white working class men have traditionally been a huge part of our party. We have lost a lot of them. And one of those reasons is we've had a tendency to talk maybe too much about gender.
I'm going to see, Greg, do you want?
Well, I always agree. I always feel that identity politics is a divisive thing. Republicans aren't announcing, hey, we're the party of men, join us. Dems, however, do have some noted voices like Gillibrand saying, we're the party of women. And I do think that even women get put off by, because I think it's patronizing. Patronizing? Who cares? Anyway, you're heading down a wrong path when even Pelosi says don't go there. She's actually, in a weird way, defending Trump. She's trying to give the media an idiot intervention because they've been idiotized by their distaste for Trump. But I'm wondering why she's doing it now, and it's interesting to me. I love her coat. Do you think it's because of what Jesse brought up? That she knows a lot of people in D.C. who are guilty of the same thing and payoffs for sexual harassment paid for by us, the taxpayer. Do you think that she knows that this is just going to go down a really bad path?
I think that she has been saying these types of things, but because she wasn't a leader,
right.
She had no power, no one listened to her, and now people are actually listening to her.
Yeah, I think she wants to start off on health care, and the media wants to start off on scandal.
And impeachment.
And impeachment. Mm-hmm. And she's like a terrible TV executive. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, guys in the media, don't cover the Trump scandals, cover health care policy. I mean, come on, Nancy. Like, what are you thinking? Of course they're going to do that. I think, they won on health care, and she wants it to be covered. It's probably how Mitch McConnell thinks. Mitch is like, we're confirming judges, tax cuts, we're doing this on trade, and you guys are just covering the Trump Tower meeting. Can I get a little credit here? I understand that. Now, with Claire McCaskill, it's funny, being a red state Democrat, it's kind of like riding a bull. You're only going to be on for like one term, maybe 2 terms.
8 seconds.
And the only reason you got there is either someone died, there's a major scandal, or like they nominated some guy, or appointed by the governor, or like some guy likes to date teenage girls. Like that's the only reason you're there. So just hold on tight. And then when they're gone, they're out of Congress, they're out of the Senate, they go, hey, Democrats, there's a whole country out there, and trust me, you can't play the gender card all the time.
Why aren't you on Special Report?
That's what I asked Brett the other day.
Pure genius.
I thought it was
Go ahead,
sharp.
No, it's to the bone.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was an interesting comment by Pelosi, and I think you guys are right. I think she wants people to cover real issues because I think that's what she wants the Democrats to be on and ahead of the 2020 race, and people won't be able to say it's just about the Democrats' scandal, investigate Trump. But, I was thinking about this, and one thing that strikes me, I just want to mention quickly, is the end of the Weekly Standard. Because here you have a conservative magazine who's actually doing reporting and could be critical of Trump, and they get pushed out of business. They lose subscribers. Same thing happened to National Review after they were critical. And so now you get a situation
I don't think
where...
that's why.
Well, I do, but I think...
I know why.
Okay, but here's my point, that I think that right now in the sort of conservative media bubble, if you are pro-Trump, that's all people want to hear. They just want to affirm Trump is okay. Everything is coming by attacks from the liberal press. That's not what's going on. What do you think is going on?
Well, my point was specifically about the Weekly Standard, which was a business decision. I don't think.
Yeah, because they were losing subscribers.
That's actually not it.
Okay.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. Emily, when Claire McCaskill is saying we've got to do something more, you can't just talk to women in the party, but do the Republicans also need to talk about women? I mean, they lost women in the 2018 midterm elections, and they've got some ground to make up.
Yes, I think there was aggressive messaging by the left in the midterm elections towards women, but I think it would be more significant strides would be achieved if it wasn't so term specific. Like, that's when you lose everyone. That's when you alienate everyone that's not a woman, right? I went to a diversity event recently, but it was never called that. And the planner said that the whole commitment was for diversity and there was a certain percentage and whatever, but it was never, it was just a certain finance event.
What was it called?
The Greg Gutfeld Show. So the point is that it allowed everyone to just relax rather than be confined to some type of, oh, I am this, and so I'm going to answer to this call. I respectfully disagree with your point about the conservative bubble, because I think there's a significant faction that isn't just a knee-jerk pro-Trump, that supporters in the conservative bubble. And then on the
well, who would that
Pelosi.
be?
I mean, do you want me to name names?
Some people
No,
here.
but I'm just saying that's what it looks like. I mean, by the way, on the point that you're making about the women thing,
Yeah.
there was I think it's a 23-point gender gap in the midterms, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at what happened. I think there are like 30-something freshman Democratic women coming in the next Congress, and the Republicans lost. They went down from like 20 to 13.
One, I'm not trying to cut you off. We have breaking news that I want to bring to you. This Fox News alert, President Trump just tweeting that Mick Mulvaney, who is his OMB director and the head of the CFPB, will serve as his acting chief of staff. So not a permanent chief of staff, but Mick Mulvaney, who I think many of you might know of. He was a congressman from South Carolina. Juan, your thoughts about Mick Mulvaney taking over, just to see them through?
Well, I mean, the big news before this, Dana, was that Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, said he was taking himself out. And we've seen a series of people say, no, I'm not going to do it. It's a difficult job, and it looks like the coming 2 years are going to be turbulent. I think a lot of people moved away. So Mick Mulvaney is really taking one on for the team.
Yeah, now he has 3 jobs, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's a
would
lot
not,
of work.
being Trump's chief of staff, my mother recommended I not do that. So now, like Christie, I will be taking myself out of consideration for
Good
that
job,
role.
Jesse.
Like I said before, I think it's all about personal chemistry with the president. And it looks like
They have a good
Mick has a
relationship.
nice relationship, and he could steer the course in the next, I don't know how long it's going to take to get a permanent one, maybe 2 weeks, a month. But I don't think that a lot of the people's names that were being bandied about, like Chris Christie and David Bossie, were actually in serious consideration.
And now the president gets to go into the weekend with a little bit of news that story, we're going to take it off the page for the front.
Yeah, I guess I'm not interested in staffing changes as much as I guess I'm supposed to be. I just see people go in and go
It's a little bit
out.
of a Washington parlor game.
Exactly. I really don't get. And watching not people I won't mention, Santorum, claiming that they were up and then they're not up. It's just like
floating their names.
Floating their names. I mean, come on. Come on.
Emily?
Just to point out for viewers that the limit on acting on the role of an acting position, there's limits to that. But when the fact that the president appointed him or nominated him or whatever, that's that.
But in the chief of staff role, you could be acting for a long time.
Exactly. And so that's it. It makes it indefinite. So it could be, like you said, it could be a week and a month. It could be clearly,
He looks
or
like
it could
he's
be
acting
longer
pretty
than
angry
that.
right now. Is that him after he found out he
Oh
was
my
chief
God.
of staff?
That's a live shot, actually.
But he had said
He's impersonating Pence.
Mick Mulvaney had said that he was not interested in that position, that he likes the jobs that he has, or would even consider a cabinet position. But the chief of staff role is I think he'd make a good chief of staff, and maybe he'll get in there and decide that it's pretty good. You're the gatekeeper for the president.
The most interesting possibility had been Jared Kushner, that if he had brought in Jared, because remember, what happened was that the previous chief of staff was said to be on the outs with Jared and Ivanka. But now, I don't know what Mulvaney's relationship is.
Well, he's a very smart guy, and I think he's well liked.
And also, they're headed into budget season, so it's a good time to have the president's ear. Okay. Is Mika Brzezinski's attack on Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State, exposing a double standard? That's next on The Five.
This is a Fox News alert. President Trump just announcing that Mick Mulvaney, OMB director, will be the acting White House chief of staff. For more, let's go to White House correspondent Kevin Corke. Kevin?
You know what, Em, it's always interesting. You never know what's going to happen on a Friday here at the White House. And in particular, when you consider the Michael Cohen story dominating the news cycle, it probably doesn't surprise you that the White House would love to throw just a little meat out there for the base and perhaps even a little distraction on this Friday afternoon. So as you just pointed out, the president just taking to Twitter not terribly long ago to announce that he was going to, at least on an acting basis, name his director of the the Office of Management and Budget. Mick Mulvaney, the acting White House Chief of Staff, replacing General John Kelly, who has served our country with distinction. The president saying this: Mick has done an outstanding job. While in the administration, I look forward to working with him in the new capacity as we continue to make America great again. John will be staying with us until the end of the year. He's a great patriot, and I want to personally thank him for his service. Mick Mulvaney is a guy who we see fairly often here at the White House. He has obviously served in a number of capacities for this administration, and now it appears he will be serving in yet another, at least on an acting basis. As we get more information and perhaps some sound, of course, I'll pass it along. But for now, back to you.
Kevin, thank you so much. All right, Mika Brzezinski coming under fire for using a homophobic slur earlier this week while attacking Mike Pompeo for defending the Saudi crown prince in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
I understand that Donald Trump doesn't care. Heilman makes a good point. He doesn't care. But why doesn't Mike Pompeo care right now? Are the pathetic deflections that we just heard when he appeared on Fox and Friends, is that a patriot speaking or a wannabe dictator's butt boy? I'm dead serious. I'm asking, are these the words of a patriot?
The MSNBC host is now saying sorry for her offensive remark, but notice who Mika leaves out of her apology.
I wanted to address a term that I used on this show on Wednesday that was vulgar. I knew it right away, and I tweeted that it was a terrible choice of words and that I was sorry. But please allow me to say this face to face. The term is crass and offensive, and I apologize to everyone, especially the LGBTQ community, and to my colleagues for using it. It was a mistake, but I just wanted to say on camera, looking the viewers straight in the eye, I am really, really sorry.
Greg, I'm going to start with you because I think that is.
Why? Go ahead.
I think that's it's such a carelessness. It's an illustration of the carelessness that to me permeates the media now. And there's a difference between thoughtful emphasis and all the time that, for example, you put into all the stuff that you say, and you make so many jokes. So walk us through that fine line that to me isn't really that fine.
Well, here's the deal. She apologized, and you should accept every apology, right? And I say this knowing in my head that if I said that, they would never do the same for me. So I think on the show, I forgave, I accept apologies. Joy Behar, Joy Reid, even Kathy Griffin, Sam Cedar. Do you remember when he got canned from MSNBC? Yeah. I defended him. He got his job back. You're welcome, Sam. Anyway, but if I slip up, I would be gone. So the thing is, we should always be the better person, and we should always accept the apology. And I actually believe, I disagree a little with you. I think that doing live television is kind of a high wire act, especially when you get emotional. And she is very, very, very emotional about Trump, right? So Trump has changed a lot of people. And so they get emotional and they say things. And then meanwhile, you have an entire gawker industry, a generic term gawker, that are there just waiting for you. Right? These media blogs waiting for you to screw up. And if anybody at Fox News screws up, God help you, because they don't want your apology. They'll come after you. They'll boycott you. They'll do whatever they can. Meanwhile, all of us here will say, we accept your apology because we're good people.
Dana, what is MSNBC's role here, PR-wise? What's their?
Well, I'm sure as soon as they heard it. Well, maybe, I don't know. I would imagine she says that as soon as she heard it, she knew that it was wrong, or she was going to have to make an apology. And when you're on live TV and you're trying to be, quick-witted, and you reach for a phrase, and then you realize you shouldn't have said it, like, oh, maybe you should have apologized right away. That took like 48 hours for them to do it. Absolutely, I think the apology is fine. But think about on the other side, think about somebody like Kevin Hart, or
the Heisman Trophy winner. 14 years. 14-year-old.
But at least the Heisman Trophy winner doesn't have to give back his prize.
Right.
Kevin Hart had to basically walk away from what would have been a great gig for him, which was hosting the Oscars, and now they can't find a single person that they think is worthy.
She can host it.
That's a good idea.
Jesse, to Greg's point about how the landscape has kind of changed, that basically Trump has charged people so emotionally, it literally has changed the landscape potentially of live TV. What is that about?
I wasn't listening to Greg talk. I tuned him out. Just kidding. I think basically what happened here is whenever there's a controversy, I say to myself, if Waters had said that, what have been the repercussions? And usually it's a huge double standard. If I had said that, I would have been toast. and there would be no Water's World, and it would be a very sad day. But there's an unequal system of justice in America. Look, Hillary gets treated differently. How about some whataboutism? Obama gets treated differently. Trump gets treated differently. But even in the court system, rich people get treated differently. Poor people get treated differently. So when there's a scandal or a comment, you think, oh, Joy Reid got away with it. The woman from CNN, Caitlin Collins, said some stuff in the past. She got away with it. I think, who's the guy that hosts the late night show? Stephen Colbert got away with that vulgar.
Jim Jeffries. If you look up Jim Jeffries' past, he's got a show on Comedy Central.
Yeah, and think about Bill Maher, who's white, said the N-word on television, and he's fine. And you know who got in more trouble? Ben Sasse, the Republican, for not denouncing him strongly enough in the moment. Totally. So it really depends on a few things.
Look at Roseanne.
Yeah, Roseanne, another situation. Who you are, if you're a member of that PC inner circle club, who you're attacking, if it's a Republican, it's okay, and the kind of the language that you use. And there's a big double standard.
Juan, do you agree?
I have
say yes.
I have a different view here because what I think is interesting about this situation with Micah, Jesse, is that Micah, whatever, as you said, potato. But
Are you calling her a potato?
She's not a. It's a good thing I didn't say. Starch. It's a good thing I didn't say tomato. But I think what's interesting is here that you have people on the left who are upset with her, and I think that's why, to your point, the apology didn't go to Mike Pompeo. It went to the LGBTQ community or whatever, because they're the ones that said, hey, and you even heard this from President Trump's ambassador to Germany, our former colleague, who said that when you sexualize gay sex, it's offensive. It demeans them. And I think that's who was upset, and I think that's why she had to do that, because the advertisers and the network are sensitive to that community. That's their community. That's their viewers. Yeah. We saw this recently. A young black man made a speech about Israel in which he used this thing about, sea to shore, whatever. And they said, hey, we can't have you here anymore. People do get punished. But, to me, this is like impulsive language, rude language. To me, it's not good. I think it coarsens the whole notion of how we have exchanges. But I must say, boy, do we know where this has all come from? A guy named Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. All right, on that note, all right.
Trump.
'Tis the season for gift giving. 2 new studies to help my fellow Fivers get ready for the Christmas shopping rush ahead.
Marino and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Michael Cohen and President Trump trading accusations about what really happened with hush money payments to 2 women before the election. In his first interview since being sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, the president's former personal attorney claims he was following Trump's instructions about the payoffs.
He directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters. You have to remember at what point in time that this matter came about, 2 weeks or so before the election, post the Billy Bush comments. So yes, he was very concerned about how this would affect the election.
To help his campaign.
To help him and the campaign.
But President Trump is saying Cohen's lying about what actually happened.
I never directed him to do anything incorrect or wrong. And he understands that. Look, he did some bad things unrelated to me, maybe related to his other clients. I wasn't his only client. Wow. And Michael Cohen pled guilty to something that's not even a crime. Wait a minute. These are campaigns. Nobody, except for me, would be looked at like this. Nobody. What about Congress, where they have a slush fund and millions of dollars is paid out each year?
Also breaking today, the special counsel turning over documents to a judge in the Michael Flynn case. The response coming after Flynn's attorneys argued that the FBI encouraged the former national security advisor to do an interview with agents without agents present. Lawyers. Robert Mueller's team claims Flynn should have known it was a crime to lie to the FBI, but the documents say they never warned him beforehand. All right, Emily, let's go back to the first part. The president says, what about Congress? They have this big slush fund that they use with taxpayer money to settle sexual misconduct cases. That's never reported anywhere. Aren't there just felonies galore in Congress?
Wait a minute.
Well, I was talking
to Emily.
Is your name Emily?
But let me ask you, are we
cute,
off
but you're not
topic?
that cute.
Have we just moved away from Cohen and all that happened today?
Well, I'm not hijacking.
It's only 5:02.
The segment. I'm trying to lay it out specifically.
Oh my
Relax.
gosh, this is
Juan, what's gotten
for
into
this.
you?
It's a little
I
early
just
for
think
this.
it's whataboutism, run rampant. Go right ahead.
I take offense to that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. So here's how I think about that. There is a bill right now in Congress being pushed through bilaterally that will take out from the salary expenditures that taxpayers pay in terms of paying that harassment thing. So that will be changed. I do think that it's a little bit of a shell game. I want to point out, if I can, though, that everyone is talking about the specific intent associated with it. And I just want to make sure that viewers understand that, yes, that's what separates a civil from a criminal campaign finance violation charge. But most importantly to me is that Flynn situation. I think it's a hideous abuse of power to treat any of those kinds of conversations casually, and that we can never overestimate the amount of weight that the government brings with it every time they just sit down and ask, hey, how are you? And so for Comey then to blame it on a disorganized administration, and so I thought I'd send a couple guys over, I think is a horrible abuse of power, 100%. And regardless what happens with the judge reviewing the Flynn documents, and regardless of what he should have known, there is no way that when someone sits down and says, hey, I have a couple questions for you, but, oh, if you want, I can grab a warrant and go